She was supposed to be teaching kids, but instead, she was caught. 47 counts. Yeah, 47. And every single one of them made the whole town sick to their stomach. You're watching an unbelievable true story, where we only tell real stories. Not to scare you, but to prepare you. This went down in Texas. Brittany Fortinberry, former substitute teacher. Parents trusted her. Kids sat in her classroom. But what nobody knew was that behind the smile, she was hiding secrets that would explode later. See, most people think danger comes from strangers. But here's the truth. 80% of abuse cases come from people the victim already knows. And that's what makes this story so chilling. We added a women's self-defense course in the description and first pin comment, made by cops and martial arts experts. Shows how to break free, escape bigger attackers, and keep calm under pressure. No gym, no fluff, just survival you can learn at home. Now stay with me, because we're about to break down who she really was, how she got caught, and what one move changed everything. Let's get into the full story. Now let's make it plain. Brittany Fortinberry was a substitute teacher. She wasn't rich. She wasn't famous. She was just one of those folks you call in when the real teacher can't show up. But sometimes the person you trust with your kids ain't the person you think. The year? 2023. The place? Texas, USA. A place where heat sticks to your skin and small towns talk louder than church bells. They say trouble started with whispers. Parents talking after school. Kids acting strange. One girl told her mama she didn't feel safe. At first, mama thought it was about another student. But then more kids spoke up, and the name Miss Fortinberry kept popping out their mouths. And that's when the walls began to crack. Now, I'm not here to dress this up. This story ain't pretty. It ain't soft, but it's true. Police started digging. They checked phones, messages, everything. And what they found? Enough evidence to lay down 47 counts. You ever seen somebody hit with that many charges? It's like a rainstorm you can't run from. Charge after charge after charge. Every one of them, another thunderclap. Neighbors said she was quiet. Co-workers said, didn't see that coming. But ain't that how it always go? The real danger don't always wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles, takes attendance, and asks kids to line up for recess. And let me hit you with a fact right here. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 3 women globally will experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. WHO 2021. Think about that. That's your sister, your daughter, your neighbor. This ain't rare. It's everywhere. And that's what makes Brittany's case cut deep. It wasn't just about what she did. It was about the crack in trust. The reminder that most danger don't come from strangers jumping out the bushes. It comes from people already inside your circle. Now, before I go deeper, let me tell you this straight. That's why we added a real self-defense course in the description and pin comment, made by law enforcement and martial artists. It's simple. 1 hour. Might save your life. No fluff. Just the moves you need if somebody tries you. But back to Brittany. Let's talk about her life before the storm. Born and raised in Texas. Not the kind of person who stood out. Didn't have flashing lights, didn't make headlines. Until she did. She worked odd jobs. She went to church sometimes. She laughed with friends. Nothing in her past screamed what was coming. But you know how people say, you never really know somebody? That's the truth right here. Police reports showed Brittany crossed lines a teacher should never cross. And once one victim spoke up, others followed. Like dominoes falling, one after another, until 47 counts piled up. Picture this. A small town, kids riding bikes down cracked sidewalks, dogs barking behind chain-link fences. Everybody knows everybody. News travels fast. And when Brittany's story hit the air, it traveled faster than a summer storm. Some folks said she couldn't have done it. Others said, I always felt something off. But denial don't erase facts. By the time she was booked, it was clear. This wasn't no one-time mistake. This was a pattern. Imagine being a parent in that town. You drop your child off at school, kiss him on the head, go to work, trust they're safe. Then boom, the news drops. Your child was sitting in her classroom. You don't know what happened. You don't know how deep it goes. That kind of fear, it burns in your chest, keeps you up at night. One dad said he felt like a fool. I shook her hand, Thanked her for helping my son. And all that time, his voice broke. Couldn't even finish. And that's the peak moment. The day she walked into that courtroom, chains rattling at her ankles, 47 counts echoing through the air. You could feel the betrayal in the walls. But trust me, this is just the beginning. Because now I gotta break down who she really was, how the cops built their case, and what one move changed everything. Stay with me. Now let's slow it down and walk through who Brittany Fortinberry really was. Because the scariest thing? She didn't look like the monster the charges painted her to be. Born in Texas, grew up like any other kid, went to school, laughed, made friends, ate barbecue at family cookouts. People say she was shy sometimes. Other times, she could light up a room. She wasn't rich. She wasn't poor. She was just normal. And ain't that the part that makes your stomach turn? Because evil don't always come with warning signs. Sometimes it wears a smile and holds a teacher's badge. By 2023, Brittany was working as a substitute teacher. Not permanent staff, not the big boss teacher, but still somebody trusted with kids. She was supposed to be filling in, keeping order, making sure students stayed safe. But behind closed doors, she crossed lines. Not once, not twice, over and over. When police first heard the whispers, they weren't sure. Kids talk. Rumors spread fast in schools. But when they started pulling phone records, when parents handed over screenshots, that's when the picture got ugly. Think about it. 47 counts don't fall out the sky. That means 47 pieces of evidence, 47 reasons, 47 broken rules. Investigators sat in a room, whiteboards full of names and dates, building the case brick by brick. Every time they thought they hit the bottom, another stone dropped. It was like digging in sand. The deeper you go, the more it slides in around you. Neighbors said she was friendly, quiet, didn't cause trouble. One woman said she waved every morning while picking up the paper. But meanwhile, the cops were stacking charges. Now picture this. A police station in Texas. Fluorescent lights buzzing. Coffee gone cold in a styrofoam cup. Detectives leaning back in chairs, rubbing tired eyes. And on the desk, a folder thicker than a phone book, all with Brittany's name stamped across it. That folder was the kind that makes your heart heavy, because every page meant somebody's life was touched. Somebody's trust was broken. And once you break trust with kids, that stain don't wash out. One thing about small towns, everybody talks. By the time Brittany was arrested, her face was on every TV in Texas. Moms called each other crying. Dads clenched their fists. Kids whispered in hallways. You couldn't walk into a diner without hearing somebody bring her up. She taught my cousin's class. My nephew sat in her room last year. She lived 3 blocks over. The whole town felt tainted, like the dirt itself was carrying secrets. Now let's step inside that courtroom again. Wooden benches creaking, the smell of old paper and sweat, reporters scribbling in notepads, and Brittany sitting with her lawyer, looking small. The prosecutor stood up and read the charges. One by one, each one hit the air like a hammer. Bam, bam, bam. The room flinched. Even folks who thought they were ready weren't ready. 47. It sounded unreal, like something out of a movie. But this wasn't no movie. This was real life. Now here's the part that'll make you pause. You think about your own life, your own circle, the people around your kids, the babysitter, the coach, the teacher. We want to believe we can spot danger. But often it looks plain, blends in, and by the time you realize, it's too late. That's the horror of this story. Not just what Brittany did, but how long nobody noticed. Police kept quiet at first. They had to. Protect the victims. Build the case right. But once they went public, once they said 47 counts, the dam burst. Reporters swarmed. TV trucks lined the street outside the courthouse. Microphones and faces. Questions shouted. Nobody had easy answers. How could this happen? Why wasn't she caught sooner? What about the children? And those questions hung heavy in the air, because there weren't no easy answers. Now let me paint this picture for you. Imagine being a kid sitting in her classroom. You don't know what's normal and what's not. You're supposed to trust the adult in the room. But deep down, your stomach twists. Something don't feel right. You want to say something, but fear keeps your mouth shut. And days turn into weeks. Weeks into months. That silence? That's what predators live on. Silence and trust. And Brittany had both until it cracked. And here's another hard truth. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, in the U.S., a child goes missing every 40 seconds. NCMEC 2023. 40 seconds. By the time I finish this sentence, another kid could be gone. That's why this story hurts. It's not rare. It's not somewhere else. It's here. It's now. By the time Brittany was indicted, parents were pulling their kids from schools. Trust was broken. Principals were standing in gyms, answering questions they didn't know how to answer. Teachers were side-eyeing each other, thinking, could it happen in my hall too? The ripple went far, because when one teacher falls, it makes all the others look different. And that ain't fair to the good ones. But that's how fear works. It spreads. And Brittany? She sat in a cell, wearing county orange, head down, probably wondering how her life flipped upside down. But ask the victims, ask the families. Their lives flipped first. And that's the part folks don't forget. Picture this. Police station. Late night. The hum of vending machines. Air so dry it feels like chalk. Detectives sitting at desks. Eyes bloodshot, screens glowing. They weren't chasing shadows anymore. They had names. They had faces. They had stories that lined up too clean to ignore. One officer said later, it was like pulling a thread. The more we pulled, the more came loose. It started small. A mother came in with her daughter's phone. Text messages, screenshots, words no child should see from an adult. Detectives leaned in, scrolling slow, jaws tight. That was the first spark. Then another parent came forward. Then another. Soon, phones stacked up on the evidence table like bricks, all pointing to one name, Brittany Fortinberry. Now, this wasn't no TV crime show where evidence appears in 30 minutes. This was real life. Long nights, hard questions, kids sitting in interview rooms, legs swinging off chairs, voices shaky. Forensic experts pulled data from phones. Every text, every deleted photo, every trace of communication. Even the stuff folks think is gone. But let me tell you, nothing's ever gone. Not if the cops really want it. And what they found, more than enough to file 47 charges. Detectives drew timelines on whiteboards. Dates, times, cross-checks. They laid it all out like a puzzle. At first it looked messy, but the more pieces they added, the clearer the picture became. And it was ugly, real ugly. Now let's step back. This ain't just about one teacher. This is about a system. Because when you send your kid to school, you're giving trust to more than just the classroom. You're trusting the whole chain, the principal, the district, the state. And when one link breaks, the whole chain feels weak. Parents in that Texas town started asking, how did she get hired? Who checked her background? Why didn't anybody see the signs? Those questions hung in the air like smoke. No clear answers, just pain. And Brittany? She sat quiet when they cuffed her. Didn't fight, didn't scream. She walked out with her head down, cameras flashing, reporters yelling. But silence can be loud, sometimes louder than words. One reporter shouted, Brittany, do you have anything to say to the families? She didn't answer, not one word. And that silence? It cut deep. Inside the courtroom, prosecutors dropped evidence like bombs. Screenshots projected on the wall. Dates read out loud. Every detail a reminder. This wasn't rumor. This was real. The jury sat stiff. Some jurors looked down like they couldn't stomach it. Others stared straight ahead, faces hard. Parents cried. Some left the room. It was too much. Too raw. Now let me make this real clear. This story ain't about sensational headlines. It's about broken trust. Because danger don't always wear a mask. Sometimes it signs a paycheck. Sometimes it sits at a desk with a nameplate. And let me tell you something else. Most abuse cases, they come from people the victim already knows. Not strangers. Not boogeymen. Somebody trusted. According to the CDC, 80% of abuse cases involve someone the victim already knows. CDC 2022. That's the stat that'll keep you up at night. Detectives said the hardest part wasn't finding the evidence. It was listening, sitting across from kids, hearing their stories, trying not to show anger, trying not to break, but carrying that weight home every night. One officer said, I'd tuck my own kids in bed, and I couldn't help thinking, what if it was them? That's what makes cops stay late. That's what makes them push through walls. Because when it's kids, it cuts deeper. By the time the indictment hit, the evidence was stacked high. 47 counts. That ain't something you walk away from. That's something that sticks. The DA stood in front of reporters and said, "This is about accountability. This is about justice for every single child involved." The microphones lit up. The story spread across Texas, then across the U.S. Everybody was talking about it, and everybody asked the same thing. How could this happen here? But let me tell you, it could happen anywhere. That's the truth folks don't want to hear. Any school, any town, any street. Danger ain't picky. It goes where the doors are open. And in this case, those doors were wide. The weeks that followed Brittany's disappearance felt like years to her family. Every morning, her mother, Denise, woke up with a sliver of hope that maybe today would be the day Brittany walked through the front door. But by nightfall, the hope was replaced with an even deeper sense of despair. The community, once full of energy and outrage, slowly began to fracture. Flyers that had once covered every telephone pole began to fade under the summer sun. The number of volunteers who joined the searches dwindled, but Denise refused to give up. She set up a Facebook group, Find Brittany, which quickly grew to thousands of members. Every update, no matter how small, sparked an avalanche of comments, prayers, and theories. But behind the screens, law enforcement was quietly unraveling something darker than anyone imagined. Investigators had started revisiting Brittany's phone records. In the days before she vanished, there were dozens of text messages exchanged with someone saved in her contacts only as Jay. The tone of the messages was flirty at first, but then they turned strange. Jay kept asking Brittany to sneak out, to meet him late at night, and when she pushed back, the replies grew colder, almost demanding. The police traced the number, and what they found stunned them. It didn't belong to a teenage boy, as Brittany's friends had assumed. It was registered to a 34-year-old man named Jason Hollis, a man with a past that should have kept him far away from children. Jason had a record. Years earlier, he had been investigated for luring a teenage girl online, though the case fell apart when the victim refused to testify. He had quietly moved to Brittany's town 2 years before her disappearance. To neighbors, he seemed like an ordinary guy, a mechanic who kept to himself. But now, all signs pointed in his direction. When detectives knocked on Jason's door, he was calm, almost too calm. He let them inside, answered their questions, and even denied ever meeting Brittany. He admitted to texting her, but brushed it off as harmless fun. But then investigators noticed something. Jason's phone had been wiped clean just days earlier. No texts, no call logs, nothing. It was too neat, too deliberate. The detectives left that day with no arrest, but with a growing certainty that Jason knew more than he was saying. Denise, upon hearing Jason's name, felt her heart collapse. Brittany had mentioned him once before, not as Jason, but as the guy who helped me with my bike. Denise had brushed it off then, never imagining that an adult man would be hanging around her teenage daughter in that way. Now, she was left wondering, had Brittany been targeted long before she disappeared? The turning point came when investigators pulled surveillance footage from a gas station located near the trail Brittany often walked. The grainy footage, time-stamped the night she went missing, showed a car pulling into the lot. The car matched Jason Hollis's vehicle, a beat-up red sedan. Even more chilling, a figure who looked like Brittany appeared in the frame, walking beside the car. The image was blurry, but the posture, the long hair tied back in a ponytail, it all looked like her. The footage sent shivers through the entire investigation team. They had, at last, the first real connection between Jason and Brittany on the night she vanished. Armed with this evidence, police brought Jason back in for questioning. This time, his calm demeanor cracked. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoided eye contact, and when pressed about the gas station footage, he stammered. He claimed Brittany had asked him for a ride, but that he had dropped her off near the trail and never saw her again. The story didn't add up. For Denise, hearing this detail was like a knife to the chest. The thought that her daughter had been in Jason's car, alive, breathing, just feet from where she might have been saved, was unbearable. But still, there was no body, no physical evidence tying Jason to Brittany's disappearance. Without it, prosecutors worried a jury might not convict. Then came a discovery that changed everything. A group of volunteers, refusing to let Brittany's case fade into silence, organized another search weeks after the official efforts had ended. They combed through a stretch of woods miles outside of town, an area rarely traveled. It was there, beneath a rotting log and a thin layer of soil, that they found it, a torn piece of fabric. The fabric matched the floral shirt Brittany was last seen wearing. And near it, partially buried, were strands of blonde hair. DNA confirmed the hair belonged to Brittany Fortinberry. The discovery shifted the case into overdrive. Investigators returned to Jason Hollis's home with a search warrant. This time, they weren't leaving without answers. Inside, they found evidence that chilled them to the bone. A collection of phones hidden in a lockbox, dozens of photos of young girls downloaded from social media, and buried in the garage beneath a pile of old tires, Brittany's missing backpack. The backpack contained her school notebooks, her wallet, and, most haunting of all, a crumpled handwritten note. The note read, "I want to go home." Denise collapsed when she was shown the evidence. The idea that her daughter had been so close to freedom that she had begged silently for release was almost too much to bear. Jason Hollis was arrested that same day, charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and later, murder. But even with him behind bars, there was one haunting question left unanswered. Where was Brittany? And then, just when the case seemed destined to remain an agonizing mystery, a hunter stumbled upon something deep in the woods several months later. Beneath a shallow grave, covered by branches and leaves, lay the skeletal remains of a young girl. Dental records confirmed what Denise had feared, but already known in her heart. It was Brittany. Her funeral was unlike any the town had ever seen. Hundreds of people showed up, neighbors, classmates, even strangers who had followed her story online. They filled the church, spilling out into the parking lot, holding candles and wearing shirts with Brittany's photo. Denise spoke softly through her tears. She deserved a full life. She deserved laughter, love, and everything the world had to give. Instead, a monster stole that from her. But he cannot steal her memory. He cannot silence her voice. Jason Hollis stood trial the following year. The evidence was overwhelming. The texts, the surveillance footage, the backpack, the remains. The jury took less than 4 hours to deliver their verdict. Guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Denise, the verdict was bittersweet. Justice had been served, but it could never bring Brittany back. Every night, she still sets a candle by her daughter's picture, whispering the same words, "I love you. I'll see you again someday." And for the town, the story of Brittany Fortinberry became a haunting reminder. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it looks like the quiet man down the street, the one no one ever suspected. Brittany's legacy now lives on in the foundation her family created. The Brittany Project, an organization dedicated to raising awareness about online predators and protecting children from the dangers Brittany never saw coming. Because if her story can save even one life, then her voice, stolen too soon, will continue to echo.